Welcome to Not Starving Artist, the podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Benson, money coach and equity actor. I am your financial cheerleader, here to help you build your financial confidence and have power over your money. The best part, no budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks required. I went from being a broke BFA grad having weekly panic attacks about money to a financially confident, wealth-building actor and business owner. Money gets to feel fun, simple, and sexy, and I am going to show you how. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited today to introduce you to Shelly. Shelly was one of my one-on-one clients, and I'm so excited to let her introduce herself as well as hear all of the wins and the stories and where she's at now after coaching. She's an incredible human being, so I'd love for her to introduce herself.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. So my name is Shelly Morse. I'm a web designer based out of Baltimore, Maryland. Went to the University of Miami, graduated a couple of years ago, kind of decided that agency life was not for me. And so I've been a bit of a serial contractor ever since, working on different marketing contracts, as well as designing websites and doing a lot of creative development for different companies. I love yoga and salsa dancing and taking our two dogs on walks constantly. That's basically our life. So
incredible. One of my favorite things is when your dogs would make appearances on our coaching calls. It was always lovely to see them.
They might be back.
Good. So I remember some of the things that you said to me when we first started coaching together back in the summer. And I remember a couple of the things were now making a lot of money as a freelancer in a way that you didn't expect. And that was kind of blowing your mind and feeling a little bit out of control in managing that money, what to do with it, feeling like you were making mistakes around your money. We pulled up your intake form right before we started recording the podcast. And one of the things that Shelly said was it was just really ingrained that she can't afford shit or that she's making mistakes with her money. So with that, I'd love for you to share more about why you decided to join one-on-one coaching and what was going through your head at that beginning stage.
Yeah. Well, I remember finding you, and the first video I think I saw was something about using money as a tool. And I was like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm intrigued by it. That sounds like something I would want in my life, but I just don't know how to get there myself. And so I think I had this interest of I feel like there's more to this than me just being constantly anxious about my money, feeling like I'm always doing something wrong, or feeling like there's some magical toolkit somewhere that I just don't have access to. And then there's always you Google something and you're like, how much should I be putting away if I'm making this much, or how much should I be spending on rent if I'm making this much? And Google's just spewing all of these answers to you, and none of them are the same. None of them factor in the entire equation. None of it's personal. And so that's when I was I really think that working with a person who focuses more on the mindset things, versus just handing me a docket, telling me this is what you're going to do and it's going to be fine. I think that was something that was really appealing to me.
Yeah. Do you remember when we talked about, I was looking back through our Voxer messages, and one of the first things we talked about was pie charts. And we had messages where it was fuck the pie charts, because you were saying I was Googling and it's $400 to rent and $500 to charity, and none of it was resonating and making sense. So do you remember when we talked about that? And then what was the shift for you of oh yeah, fuck the pie chart. Here's what we do instead.
So I do remember talking about that. Absolutely. Because I think it's just, especially on Instagram, pending who you're following, you see a lot of that stuff continuously popping up. And so when all of that happened, I was I want a system that works for me. This doesn't feel like this would work for me. So then what is the system? So it was more of this exploratory feeling where it's okay, fuck that. Now we're ready to actually dive in and see what are the systems that should work for me. And also those systems are ever changing. Like even to this day, I'm still evolving systems where I'm like, oh, maybe that doesn't quite work for me anymore. Worked for me 6 months ago, but maybe I want to try it this way. So it's one of those things where it's like this ever evolving system, which is not something that I would have ever pictured before one-on-one coaching with you. I thought it was this like stupid fucking pie chart that I didn't have access to. So, or I was just always doing it wrong.
Yeah. So let's talk about the systems then, because that's one of the first things that we worked on in one-on-one coaching. We worked together for 6 months. And at the very beginning, that was a huge part of it, setting up systems for your business as well as for your personal finances. And we did that in the first couple of calls. So I'd love for you to talk about what those systems look like. What were some shifts in how you were thinking about systems? And then you were talking about tweaking along the way. And what did that look like?
Yeah. So I have so many more bank accounts now, which like, I think one of the biggest pluses. Like, I'm like, wow, I don't know why I didn't even think that was like something I could do. Like, I don't know why I was just like, oh, I have to have this one Bank of America account. And that's like it. Like, that was like so stupid. Like even when I had opened up a business account, but I like my business account wasn't truly like a business account. I was just like saying it was like, there wasn't true intention behind that. So starting to open up like an ally account and then having different buckets and like really being intentional about like where things are, but then also having the freedom to just like move shit around constantly and saying like, this is my money. I get to like delegate it wherever I want it to be delegated at the moment. That was something that felt like so freeing to me because like transferring money from like one account to another just to pay a bill is like all I knew before coaching with you. It wasn't like even like transferring money into savings and then being like, I have no idea what I'm saving for. I just know I should have savings. I think making that shift where it's like, this is fun and intentional and you get to like move things around or move things back. And like, that's totally fine. I think that like broke down a barrier for me personally. So
yeah. And making bank accounts low stakes, making moving money around low stakes. And something I talk about all the time, and we talked about with this Bank of America trauma, which we'll talk about in a second, is that when you're in a bank that charges you fees to move money around and you're always having to constantly like watch to make sure you're hitting the minimums and just the aggressive colors, and it's just so like stuck up and buttoned up, of course you're going to feel not great feelings when you're banking, when you're utilizing your money, which reinforces the anxiety and the stress about money. Once you move into a bank where it actually, not just in your brain is low stakes, but in the actual tangible utilizing of it is low stakes, you're not being charged fees, it's super easy to move money around, like it actually helps disintegrate the anxiety. So I'd love for you to let's talk about the buckets and the savings and how you utilize those. What did that look like for you when you started implementing that inside of Ally?
Yeah. So the buckets were really, I think a good tool to even like help me clarify just like what I wanted in life. Like, I don't think I'd ever really thought about it where it was like, oh, there's all of these things. But like anytime I had made any sort of like larger scale purchase, it was a blackout purchase. It wasn't something where I had intentionally like set the money aside for it or knew I had it in the bank or like, it was just this like, I'll find the money, it'll be fine. I want this thing, I'm gonna buy it. Which isn't a good feeling when you're spending money. Like that's not how it should be. And so creating those buckets, I was able to be like, cool, like I really want this like awesome purse and I've never been able to like buy a luxury purse before. And so that's something I was able to like create a bucket and like prioritize and then bought the fucking purse and I love it to this day. Like it's beautiful.
It's a cute purse.
It's a cute purse. Yeah. And that's something that like I had no like buyer's remorse for. And it was something that felt so intentional and like really celebratory. And like we just like went and shopped around and got coffees after. And it was like so much fun to be able to like go make that purchase versus it like being riddled with anxiety. And so I think the buckets really like they help with that, but then also just like long-term goals, like, getting married, having a fun party for a wedding, like getting a boat. I want a fucking boat at some point.
Yeah, and you do.
It's not going to happen tomorrow, but at the same time, I know that like I'm putting money away for that like in the future, and the boat's like within reach, like we're gonna get there. And I can see that because I see the bucket for it versus it just being this like savings account that I have because I feel like I need to, and then probably down the line like feeling nervous to even like take money out of it. It's just like a totally different feeling.
Yeah. And this is something else I wanted to ask you and talk to you about that relates to buckets, because one of the things that we talked about when you started coaching was this feeling of like, I don't know what I can afford. I don't know what I should be spending. I'm Googling these pie charts. I'm trying to figure out with my income, what am I allowed to spend? Hard air quotes on that. What am I allowed to spend? What is actually within my means? I'm spending less than I'm making, but there was just a lot of question marks around that. So buckets help to clarify that, right? Of like, can I buy this luxury purse? Yes, I can, because I see the money in the buckets. Are there other things that you implemented or that you remember helping shift that thought in from I don't know what I can afford to I know exactly what I can afford and I can spend on it?
Yeah. So I think just like within my business systems, I think that was really helpful because I was honestly like I was hoarding money in my business, refusing to pay myself because I was so scared of taxes. So I like I remember my old CPA was like got into my business bank account and was like, "Why do you have this much money in this? Like it's literally sitting in a checking account. Like what are you doing?" And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's why it's sitting there because I refuse to touch it. Like, I was just like out of so much fear and like being scared of the government, like coming after me. I was like, I don't even know how much I'm paying in taxes. So I'm just going to leave it there. Like, I was completely in like a frozen mode about it. And so even taking money out of that account to pay myself, I was like, oh God, like, can I do this? Am I allowed? Like, I don't know. And so having the awareness of like, oh, like, this is how much you're paying yourself out of your business per month. This goes over here, taxes are put away. We're all good. And then there's like this excess money that we get to play with. We get to decide where that goes. Does that go in savings? Does it go towards something we really want to buy this month that's like super fun that we've been wanting for a while? I think like that was really pivotal for me because it's like I had all this money just like locked away somewhere and I had like thrown the key away from me because I was too scared to open it. So
Yeah.
that's where I was at.
Yeah. So let's talk about the systems that you set up for your business, because I remember it being a really big moment for you when you paid yourself for the first time. So can you tell me about the fears that you had and then what was going on in your head and the actions you took to feel comfortable paying yourself and the things that we set up for you?
So I had been like putting off paying myself for like a month. I was like, Brooke, I can't do this. Like, this is it. Like, it just, I had so much anxiety over that piece of it. And so you're like, no, like, you're going to have a fun cocktail. You're going to sit down. Like, this is like fun CEO, like Shelly's a boss bitch time. Like, I was like, great. And so I finally sat down and like did the damn thing and like went through and like implemented the systems that we had put together, which was, taxes. We have a little bit of like a business savings going on. I don't have all that much overhead for my business. So like we don't need to keep all that much in that part of, my account. And then being able to pay myself the percentage that we decided was like good. And then seeing that hit my like personal account and knowing these things are separated. I'm good for tax season. And like, there's now this money that like is truly mine. Like, this is not money that goes to the government, like goes back to the government at any point. Like, this is my money and this is over here and I get to play around with it and say like, I want to put X amount towards savings and I'm going to pay off a credit card or I'm going to buy this like really fun thing I've been wanting. Like, it just gave me the freedom like that. I mean, that's really what it did. The system just like gave me freedom and gave me more awareness about like my entire money ecosystem.
Yeah. And I remember us implementing just blanket percentages of this is what goes to taxes, this is how you pay yourself, this is what goes into this bucket. So it was so simple. And then the stuff that we really worked on was the thoughts around it, right? The fear of seeing the number go down, not seeing that huge number in your bank account. Because I know there was a little bit of feeling like safety and security seeing the big number. So when you did make that transition where you started paying yourself and utilizing your money, knowing that all the necessities and the savings and everything were set to go, what happened when you saw that number go down? And then what was the work to feel really good inside of that system for you?
Yeah. So I think I was more scared of the number going down than it like actually made me feel. Like when I saw like even to this day, I hop in and I'm like, cool, that number is like nowhere near where it used to be. That doesn't mean I'm making any less money. That means I've actually like utilized the money that I have, which is like a really rewarding feeling. So seeing that number like having dropped down, I'm like, oh, it hasn't dropped. It's just spread out. And it's spread out across like different causes, if you will. Like it's, my business, it's me personally, it's my Roth IRA, like all of these pieces are like, puzzle pieces to the bigger picture here. And it doesn't have to all be in one account for me to like feel successful about things. I like actually love that everything is spread out because then I'm like, yeah, I know I have all of these pieces in movement, and that's like a really satisfying feeling.
Yeah. So since you brought up financial CEO parties, I'd love to know how that process has been for you, what you implement, right? When you said like, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a cocktail, we're going to do the things. What does that process look like for you now that you have a system that you're using to track your business expenses and pay yourself and utilize your money? What does that look like for you now?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still like first of every month. This is like what we're going to do. And it's going to be really fun and great. And like, not going to lie, still get some resistance sometimes where I'm like, oh God, like this, maybe this month like was lower in contracts. And I'm like very aware of that. Or maybe it's higher. And I'm like, oh God, like how am I, what are those percentages going to look like? Like, sometimes there's that fluctuation. And so I've been learning to like ride the fluctuation and still sit myself down and be like, cool, this is something that still gets to be like really, really fun. Still have had a little bit of resistance here and there, but I think that's all part of the process where it's like, it's not just like you snap your fingers one day and like everything's fine and you're throwing CEO parties every single month and everything's great. Like totally not the vibe, but down the line at some point, it'll be like zero resistance. And I know that because it's, the work will have been done. My mind will be fully there. My mind will know everything's totally okay. And so now it still gets to be fun and it still gets to be exciting. So
I love it. So let's talk about taxes since we mentioned them earlier. I know taxes were a big thing during our time coaching together, as well as CPA things. Mm-hmm. Tell us more. Tell us more about your thoughts about taxes, the CPA, what went on. Go for it.
Yeah. So I had my CPA who I think kind of like bailed me out of I would say trouble, but it really wasn't trouble. It was just some like paperwork that I had put through Tennessee Department of Revenue that shouldn't have even like really been filed. So then they're like, hey, you owe us like a ton of money. And I was like, cool, don't have that money to give you. So, and that was like a really scary thing that definitely like had some trauma around it and was like pulling up feelings. And this was like years before we were doing coaching together. And so I brought on the CPA who helped me through it. He basically handled the entire thing. I ended up owing like $200, not $120K. And everything was totally fine. But since then have continued working with the person who I think, when you find someone who like helps you out of trouble, you can get like really caught in comfort and like wanting to just stick around with that person. And so I think I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I want a whole like C-level of humans that are women that are helping with my business. And that's something that is now really important to me. And I want it to be up to the level that I'm currently at, which is not where I was at several years ago. And so I still have that CPA, but they are being fired very soon.
I love it. And I know during our time we talked about firing the CPA because like you said, having that C level, that board of directors surrounding you as a creative that make you feel supported, that don't make you feel dumb, that make you feel important, that feel like they're supporting you and your vision and your business. And I remember this specific person, right? Like not getting back to you in a timely manner. Things were being confusing, like you weren't fully understanding really what was happening. And so I worked with a lot of my clients actually on firing their white dude CPAs that might not really understand the life of a creative, a freelancer, an artist, someone who's self-employed, right? And fully giving them that support. Because I know that part of your tax drama was not understanding and not feeling supported and feeling reliant on this person who had gotten you out of this mess. And now that you were, and I mess in air quotes, right? Felt messy in your brain.
Yes.
And then now that you hit a certain level, it's like, you don't need to be dependent on that person anymore. You can now hire at a new level.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like feeling like I like owed said person like something because they bailed me out. Like, which is like, you don't owe your like money experiences to anyone. Like, it's great that he helped and that's wonderful. And that's like it. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to pull together my C-level suite. Like I'm doing that after this tax season, just because everything's kind of already been done. And so that's something that's very, very exciting. And I'm really excited to have a like women only C-level as well. I feel like that's important personally.
I love that so much. I'm so excited for you on that. So I want to jump back to Bank of America because we mentioned that earlier. You were banking at Bank of America when we started working together. Didn't like Bank of America. Talk to me about your process of switching out of Bank of America. You mentioned before we started recording the podcast, like the trauma you felt about that app, the Bank of America. Tell us more.
Well, yeah. So I remember, so coaching with you, like obviously just brought up a lot of things that I like wasn't even anticipating, like, and just going through like, you know, working on my money, I realized I had like, honestly, this like trauma bond with Bank of America where it was like, why do I feel so anxious every time I open this damn app? Like, and it was literally the second I would click the button, I felt it in my heart, like my heart would just sink. And I think it's like, I remember the days back when I was nervous about paying rent. Like I was like, I don't know how much is in my bank account and rent is literally due tomorrow. And like, who knows if I'm going to be able to pay it. Click. That was popping up for me every single time I opened the app, even years prior. Haven't had that experience in a very long time, but at the same time, like it still was like coming back up and coming back up. It's a violent red color. So it's like every time I see it, I'm like, oh, like this is so, it just irks me. And so I talked to you about that and you're like, okay, cool. We're going to get rid of it. Like we're done with that. And like, it's kind of amazing because I think about, I open Ally all the time. I just click, all good. Like, and it purple, soothing, great. Love it. Like, it's just amazing the difference. But it's something I had like a bit of resistance to. I've had that Bank of America account since it was my first bank account. It was the first money experience, I guess, that I like really ever had. Like I remember going into the bank to get this account when I was like 16 or whatever. And so closing it took me a hot second because I was like, I don't know how to close a bank account. So I'm just going to sit with this for a little bit. And also I need to like, cancel some subscriptions, move some things around. And I ended up sitting down for like literally an hour, took care of it, called Bank of America, said, hey, close my account. I don't want it anymore. They said, cool, great. And it was like the easiest thing ever to be able to like release that anxiety and like not have to deal with them as a bank anymore. And like no fees, like, moving over to Ally. I still have my Charles Schwab account, which I absolutely love. I still love them. And being able to have those two bank accounts that like make me feel really good about my money and don't make me feel violently ill every time I open the app is like, it's great. It's crazy how much like trauma I had over literally like the color and the like logo, and just like pulling up all of these feelings that were no longer true for me, because that's what your body does. So.
Right. And you're hitting something very important here too. Even though I'm not a Bank of America fan. We don't love fees. We don't love the decisions that their administration is making from the top down, right? Some real shady shit. And we love Ally Bank. I'm not sponsored. I'm obsessed with them. My clients are obsessed with them. They're a fantastic online bank. But even if it's not Bank of America, even if it's a great bank that you've been at that runs really well, but you have all of these experiences tied to this bank of logging into that specific app with those specific colors, not knowing if you have enough to pay rent, seeing things overdrafted or in the red, like that can hold those experiences. So even if they're a great bank, it can behoove you just to move, kind of like moving in apartments, right? If you have a breakup and you're still living in the same apartment that you were living in that place with, like with that person, it behooves you to move to a new place, to release those old feelings, to release those old stories, which I think is part of the experience you had switching, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, what are, the, I guess, like penalties to moving? Like there are none. Like it might take a little bit of time to get things over, but it's like, no, just like switch banks. And that's something that like, I don't think we're like taught enough, or like that's said enough, is like, if you're having a bad experience, like that doesn't have to be your bank until the day you die. Like this isn't, like this isn't something you're actually tied to. It's not gonna ping your credit, which is another thing. I was like, I don't know, will this, like, and you're like, no, just like switch, open a new account. Like we can open, we can close, we can decide that we just like we want to move something over, we want a new system over here, and like all of that is totally fine.
Low stakes. We love it. Banking is so low stakes. So
Right.
I'd love to now talk about big visions. And one of the things I remember us talking about, again, at the beginning of our time together, was you had a moment where you messaged me and you said, I'm realizing I wasn't ever like given permission to dream big, and that the only way I could dream bigger was if I had a partner. Like that was the only way because of the patriarchy. I remember you messaged, fuck the patriarchy, right? So I remember that being a moment for you. I'd love for you to share more about that piece of it, and then what helped you to dream bigger and actually have these visions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I grew up in like a single family income situation, where dad is in the military, mom is great, but has been stay-at-home mom. So I don't think I had a good picture of how I was supposed to show up in the world, knowing that that was not going to be my setup. And I was always, like told to like dream big. I just don't think I like fully realized what it was, or like how I was going to get there. And I didn't necessarily have it like modeled for me. And so I remember I was listening to a like podcast episode that you did with someone where they were talking about the like buying a home. And I was just like, oh, if I had to buy a home, I would for sure have to have like my partner on it with me. And I was like, why am I thinking that way? That's absolutely like, it's not true. And so it's like these like weird thoughts that have popped up into my head that are ingrained by the patriarchy that like make it seem like, oh my gosh, like I need to have a husband or boyfriend who's successful and is able to like do all of these things, and I'm just gonna like tag along. It's like, fuck that. Like, absolutely not. That's not where we're at right now. And like I love my partner. He makes great money, but at the same time, like I'm in a good financial situation, and I can do things like go out and buy a car, which is something we did recently. And that was completely something that was under my name, and we put the money down and it was great. And like, they're checking to see my income and my credit, and like that got us a luxury vehicle. And I don't have a 9-to-5 W-2 job. Like I don't have the standard setup. Like I've gone through situations where it's like I've had to like really like prove my worth in the world, A, as a woman, B, as a contractor and a creative, which a lot of that can be very triggering at times because you're like, oh God, are they gonna like deny me or like what? But I think it made me realize I was like, no, like I am a fully capable woman with a successful career showing up in the world, and like I'm able to go and get whatever the fuck I want to get. Which is something that like I just never really like saw or thought was going to be a possibility. And I didn't even like realize that I had that limitation like put on my brain. It just like popped up one day and I was like, why did you say that to yourself? Like, that's absolutely not true. So
Yeah. And I remember financial self-sufficiency and financial independence being such a big thing for you during our time together, not just in the numbers, but in your brain, right? In your identity and in your thoughts. So tell us about the car purchase. I want to know the process, the decision, the fears and thoughts you had on your way to make the purchase, and then tell us about the car.
yeah. So we so we have had really old cars, just like that's what both James and I have had. So we had a 2008 Honda CRV and then a 2012 Chevy Cruze with over 250,000 miles on it. Like these cars are just like ready to crumble at any moment, you know? And so we had been talking about it and we're like, man, like obviously like we really like cars, like that. It's just like cars are fun. And we just think they're so cool. And so we were like, yeah, like it would be awesome to have like a nice luxury car as the next car, but like we'll probably just run these two into the ground. Like they still have some time on them. We're not paying for car payments. Like we don't like need a new vehicle. We have two that are like functional and working, right? And so we started looking at the Audi Q5s and had like been over to a dealership just to like test drive, see if we liked it. And we're like, yeah, like sometime in the future, like maybe this is probably the car we're gonna get. Like we really like it. Pan forward like 2 weeks, both cars break down.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. And I was like, cool. We're gonna go buy a new car. So which it was totally unexpected and just like really kind of out of the blue. Like even though our cars were old, like they were still reliable. Like we thought we had another year in both of them at least, right? And so it was nice that we already like knew what we wanted. We're like, okay, we're just gonna like go get that. And we had looked and the one that we wanted was like it's this beautiful like green color. It's their premium plus, like it has like all the bells and whistles. It's gorgeous. It's like has brown leather interior, so it's not just like your standard black. Like it's just like so luxe and so cool. And so that's what we were looking for, but they're like sold out all over the country. And I was like, man, like I hope we don't have to like settle for like, you know, a different color that we don't want. Like that's really not ideal. So I'd contacted dealerships, which I've like had some patriarchal issues with. So that was like a whole you know, thing for me. Where it's like I need someone who doesn't treat me like James is paying for the car, because that's literally not what's happening, and I need to be prioritized here. So that was very important to me. And so we found the car. It was 2 hours away. It literally had just pulled into the lot. And it was actually supposed to be an Audi company car, so it came with like everything humanly possible. And I just called the guy and I was like, yeah, I'll take it, we'll be there tomorrow. And he was like, cool, sounds good, like I'm gonna write up all of the paperwork. And I was like, great. So we ended up driving down in our friend's car. And
right, because both your cars were broken.
yeah, like family member's car. And so we drive down. I pull up. So we're like, as we're driving down, I was just like, this is so fun, this is exciting, but what if I get denied for the car? Like, what if we're sitting there and they're like, nope, you can't prove your income, or like there's one negative thing on your credit report. So like, can you, like, or we need you to co-sign. Like I've had to have apartments co-signed on. And so who's going to like, let me drive off with this vehicle? Like, I was like, oh God. So I had those like fluttering feelings popping up, and I like had this voice in my head that was just like, I swear to God, it was you, but it was just like, no, you don't have to feel that way anymore. Like, you don't have to feel that way anymore. And then I was like, wow, how cool is it that I don't have to feel that way anymore? Like, that's really cool. And so Simmer Down was totally fine. We got Chick-fil-A, so I was like not hangry during the process. Made it very enjoyable. So we got there, go through all the things. I told them I wanted to be in and out. It was James's birthday, so we were like excited to get it, but also I was like, we got a birthday party to get back to. Like, let's make this fast. I do not want to sit in your dealership for like 6 hours. And we show up, there is a bow the size of a small child on top of my car. And I was like, wow, like this is everything. Like it was like the best like first car buying experience. I like had bought a used car before, but like never a new car. Never thought that was like going to be a thing for me. Never thought I'd be able to afford a new car.
And not even just a new car, a new Audi.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she's pretty. She's so pretty.
She sounds pretty.
Yeah. And so it was just such a cool experience. And then I drove her back, and James was in the other car. And I was just like, man, I'm like the coolest car on the road. Like, this is so fun. And like, I just like love that we were able to do that, and we're able to like, not be like, oh shit, both of our cars are broken down, so now we need to like ditch the long-term goal and just go for, something that's going to work in the time being. I was like, no, we're ready for this. Like, we got this. And so we're able to go do it. And like, we have the car, and like, we will literally just go for like a drive in the morning just because we like enjoy being in it. Like, it's one of the coolest things. It gives me joy every single day. Like, I'm so happy that we did it. And it was really cool that it got to be like under my name. And like, I was like, man, I own 2 cars right now. Like, this is sick. So yeah.
That's so incredible. I'm so excited for you. And I think the car in itself is super cool, and how fun with the bow and that whole experience. And what I also think is so cool about this story is that you didn't have the anxiety when both cars broke down at the same time. Like, you were prepared, not just financially, but in your headspace to make that purchase of the dream car and not settle, and be able to do that for yourself in your name. Right? Just you with your self-employed income, all of those things that previous Shelly didn't think that she was capable of or would be able to do. You made a reality, and like found that evidence for yourself of like, no, here we are. This is the new identity of us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd love to know now, when you think about before coaching, I'd love for you to sum up your energy and your thoughts about money before coaching, and then now where you are. Give me a couple sentences there.
So, I mean, before coaching, I would just say like blackout, like just total constant blackout or anxiety into blackout, like just bouncing back and forth, that's really where I was at. And like, just such a lack of confidence as well, in what I was doing. Like, it was just like this imposter syndrome where I was like, oh, this isn't actually happening to me. Like, I'm not actually making money now. So I think that's where I was before. And like, I think where I'm at now is like, just the difference in awareness, I think, is like astounding. And it's like, the anxious feelings are not gone, but like, they're so much more well managed at this point and dismissed, because I know that like my head is just talking to me, where I'm like, oh, I'm anxious about this. And then I'm like, why? There's no reason to be. You have things handled. Like, knowing that I can handle anything that is coming my way is the most valuable thing I receive from coaching from you, because it's this confidence that like, no matter what happens, like I'm going to be good and I'm going to know how to handle it. And I'm going to handle it like not swiftly, but like it's going to get handled. It's not just going to be something I sit on just like riddled in anxiety. Like I'm capable of moving through anything. And I think that, I mean, that's the difference. Like it like completely night and day.
That's so good, Shelly. That's so good. So, what I'd like to end on now, I have two more final questions. One of them is, are there any big aha moments or wins or takeaways from our time coaching together that you haven't shared yet that you'd like to?
Yeah. But like, I mean, there's just like so many that I'm like, I don't even know. I think the biggest like aha for me, other than like, because I feel like so much of this for me was like mindset work, and like even just like coming to the realization that I had been feeling all of these things that I didn't even realize because I was just like so blacked out about money. But it's like that like money gets to be exciting and fun. Like I think that's really like the biggest piece, because I never in a million years would have thought that like I would be able to like be like, oh, this is like so cool and fun that I get to buy these things. Which like, so we went down to Miami, and oh God, I might cry. I'm fine. We went down to Miami last week for a wedding, and James and I were staying in this like super, super bougie hotel that we used to get drunk at in college, because we were like, this will be so funny because we've only been there like at drunk like college parties. And I'm still like, I'm like, how did they let us in? It's a really nice hotel. We like went up to the roof and like got a drink, and we're like, haha, this is crazy because we used to be drunk here so much. But and then we like went back down to our room, and it's like the coolest hotel. Like it's sick. There's like plants everywhere, and it's just like the design's so cool. And I was just like laying in bed being like literal tears running down my face, being like, this is so cool that we get to live this way. Like this is so awesome. And so it's like those are my aha moments where it's like money is so exciting and it's so fun and it's such a great tool. And that's something that like I literally didn't know for 28 years of my life.
Wow. You're making me emotional hearing about that. And that's always the goal, right? Like money is such a huge part of our lives. Money touches everything. And so utilizing it in a way that enhances your quality of life and removing as much stress and anxiety from it as possible so you can have those moments, right? Like I had those moments moving into my apartment in New York of like, holy shit, like I get to live this way because I removed my fear around spending money and using money and started to feel safe with self-employment income that fluctuates, right? So you do get to have those moments. Oh, I love that you shared that. That's incredible, Shelly. So, my final question is, when you think about the future, what are some future money goals, lifestyle things that you're excited about when you look forward? And what are your plans to implement them?
Oh man. So I feel like just getting like we're still getting over like the Audi high. But no, I've like moved on. I'm like back to the boat. I I definitely at some point want a boat. And it's really like it's not even like the material things. It's really I like have realized so much through this process. Like I really enjoy being around water. And so like James and I literally have been doing like 3 mile walks around the harbor every single day, just because we're like, it's great that we live so close to this. And so I think like long term, I'm excited to just like still evolve my career. Like I'm still figuring out where I want to take things and like what I want to do with it. And that's always going to be like an ever shifting process. And then like long term, it's like I also like want a house in DC. And so those are expensive and we'll be able to afford it at some point. And so we're going to start, saving away for that and see where we want to be. But I think it's really like it's just exciting to know that every like every big purchase like that is going to be like an exciting thing that like we get to really enjoy, and it gets to be like what we want versus something that we're like settling on, or something that like I don't know, just like don't feel confident in. Like I just have so much more confidence with like the things that we're wanting in life. Even if I don't know what some of those things are, like I'm still like, I have no idea. Like we're going to do cool things. Maybe I don't know exactly what those are, but like we're going to figure it out and it's going to be great. So,
yeah. And it's so fun to hear your confidence in how you speak about these future things of like, they're inevitable. And also I might not know what they are, but when they do come into my desire field, I'm going to make them happen. Yeah. And that's a confidence that in our first few calls together wasn't there. And so to see the shift in how you are even thinking about money and approaching money in that sense, it's incredible to have witnessed. And I think that is so exciting, all of those goals, the known and the unknown at this point. So final question.
Yes.
For the people who are listening who are thinking about joining one-on-one coaching, what would you say to them?
Absolutely do it. Like I don't think you could have a more transformational process. The money will come back to you tenfold. Like if that's the concern, that will come back to you tenfold, and it won't be a concern to you after everything that you like go through with all of the mentality work. It is something that I think is like radiated into my business. Like it's radiated into my relationship. It's something that is not just like fix the financial ecosystem and you're on your way. This is work that I literally feel in my body to this day, and I will continue to feel for years and years and years. Like this, it is more than worth it, and the most transformational thing I think I've ever done.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shelly. And thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad that you shared your story. I loved getting to talk with you today and hear about all the things that are happening in your life now. Thank you so much for joining.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Come join me on Instagram for more on how to build a simple, sexy relationship with your money. My Instagram handle is @notstarvingartists. And if you want to dive deeper with me, head to the show notes to learn more about one-on-one coaching. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend that you want to get rich with.